We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the CashFlowPro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show.
Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of CashFlowPro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. I'm here today with Logan Freeman of FTW Investments. Logan, how are you?
I'm doing very well, man. Just coming off of a nice little family vacation and getting ready to finish the year strong. So excited about that.
Good deal, man. That's great. Yeah, those little family vacations, they can go one of two ways I've seen. They can either go where you get rest and it really is one of those relaxing, chill, kids don't bother you, or you can come back and need a vacation from your vacation, which is typically the way I come back. Yes, I come back way more often as the second option there than I do the first. So
my kids are young, 3 and 2, so there's not a ton of rest, but they are a lot of fun and make me a better man, and create memories with them is a lot of fun. So
that's and sometimes as they get older, and we've got 5, so it's 13 to 8, 9, 13 to 8. So other choices in my life led to that. So
absolutely, man.
Just kidding. Yeah. And but sometimes it's hard to keep that in mind, especially when they're being just crazy and rambunctious and needy and whatever else it is. But no, man, that's great. Yeah. Family time and family memories are definitely more than what I give credit for at times. So yeah, man. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started, and what brought you into this business that we so adamantly love.
Yeah. So, my journey is pretty interesting. Started in Jefferson City, Missouri is where I grew up. And, I was just a farm boy from Jefferson City, Missouri. What do you do around there? Well, you bale hay, you work when you're young, and, you play sports. And so that was my life growing up. And, it gave me an opportunity to really blossom as a collegiate athlete, playing football. And a little bit afterwards in the NFL, being a Chiefs fan like we were talking about, I was out at the Oakland Raiders camp, ultimately didn't make that team and decided I was going to go back to school and finish my master's degree. But, at the NFL Combine, man, I was 335 pounds. And 6 months after I was cut, I was 219 pounds. And a big physical transformation, but really what happened was a big mental transformation for me. And that was just getting back into reading books. I was looking to kind of create a new identity for myself. Us athletes, that's all and that's what you put all your time, effort, and energy into. And so when you don't have that anymore, well, who are you? And so I went on a kind of a journey and a quest, and thankfully found books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins and all these guys, that I was listening to on CD-ROMs, believe it or not, back then 9 years ago. CD-ROMs.
I've never had anybody, Logan, on this show that's ever referenced Rich Dad, Poor Dad. No, I'm just kidding.
No, yeah,
obviously,
right.
That's a joke.
Yeah. So, and this was kind of the beginning of podcasts back then. And so it just really started to listen to, Lewis Howes and John Lee Dumas and, all these guys, Pat Flynn, talking about, different, cash flow streams. And so I got it, at the concept level. I was like, okay, that sounds really good, but how do you actually go and build that? And one theme that I always saw was I'd take the concepts out of the books and then I'd go search them out in real life. And so I would talk to mentors or successful business people and say, are you doing this online thing? And or is it something else? And one theme that came true through all those conversations was, real estate. And, they said, hey, we invest in real estate either actively or passively. And, that kind of interested me because it was tangible. I wasn't selling a PDF that I created or doing some online business. I'm a, Midwestern boy. I like to shake hands. We're from the show me state, so show me something. And, I really liked that part of real estate. And so when I got started in the business, I was thinking about real estate, bought my first house in Kansas City, ended up doing a live-in flip and made more money on that flip than I did that I was getting paid. And I was like, there's something to this, there's something to this. And that I took that and continued to work jobs. But 5 or 6 years ago, I was fired from my last job. And I thought, hey, I've read 750 books. I've listened to as many podcasts as you can listen to. And I think it's time to actually do something about this. And so my wife said, look, I'm going to support you with what you want to do. And so just so happens that a mentor of mine just landed a big client. It was a $50 million fund here in Kansas City, buying single family homes, doing the buy, renovate, finance, and rent it out and refinance model. And I was the head of acquisitions for that fund. So my first year in real estate, I got 120 transactions under my belt. And when I was done with that fund,
and there was a broker somewhere that loved you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, man. It was fantastic. Real world experience and knowledge gained through that was.
That's one every 3 days, dude. That's pretty whoop ass. That's moving.
We're moving it. Yeah.
That's keeping a lot of stuff in front of you for sure. I want to just take a little pause there because, man, I think, we know you now. I want to point out to the audience that Logan and I are in Raise Masters together. We're both currently drinking Hunter Thompson's Kool-Aid, which is some pretty good Kool-Aid. If I had to bet, if I had to say one thing about it, no, Hunter's a good guy and taught us a lot. And so, man, I think I know you can kind of breeze past that, but to give just the listeners a little look into your work ethic. I mean, so far we've got college football, which obviously led from high school football. There's not been a slouch yet that's tried out for a team, even though you didn't make it. I mean, what I'm getting at is the work ethic is there. Yeah. Number 3, 120 transactions for somebody else's company in 1 year's time. I don't want the audience to underestimate what it would take to do a single family purchase every 3 days for an entire year. And I mean, that's some serious movement that also, if I had to bet, gave you a really good look into the systems, like the systems that you had to have in place. And the thing about the thing that's so intriguing about your systems and how you all do it, you raise capital the same way, is they're all forward looking, right? They, like, everything are obstacles that you're coming at systems. They're not necessarily, and then of course there is obviously some systems in the back that kind of pick up the back end if there's any stragglers that want to come along and invest or whatever. But the thing is that when you're acquiring that kind of properties, whether it's for a fund, whether it's for yourself, whether it's for whoever, grandma gives you money to go buy, whatever. The thing is that everything is coming at you like I don't know, like Mario Kart, right? You're constantly having an inspection. You're constantly having a closing. You're constantly having a title opinion. You're constantly having a problem with this, a problem with that, a problem with the broker, a problem with whatever. And it's tackling each thing as you go along. And that's what, and I've noticed just the stuff that I've read and I've seen you say and mention in our Raise Masters group. It's the same way you raise capital. You identify the problem. It might be 25 miles down the road, but then you take all these little problems as you work up to that big problem or work up to that big thing, and then boom, here we are, right? That's exactly right. I'm a prime believer that you get paid in proportion to the size of the problems that you're willing to solve out there in the marketplace. Yeah. And that's right. These guys, this was their second or third market they were doing this on, so I got to learn from them. But when I sat down and said, hey, where did the money come from? That's when the light bulb went off for me. They said, well, we syndicated the equity. And I said, you what did? Syndicated, synda what? And so I had to learn all of that. And I said, that's a great model. I'm not interested in doing it on the single family home side, but I am on multifamily and commercial. And so I took that idea to my broker at the time and was like, hey, this is what I'd like to do. And he goes, well, you're not going to do it here because you're going to get squashed out there in the marketplace. Fast forward 4 or 5 years,
We've got 1,400 units. We have, 2 shopping centers. We have 2 office buildings. We're buying a 208,000 square foot industrial building, and we have 25 employees. So if you're willing to kind of, get in there and learn it and, put the work in, you can be successful. But I will say this, grit, gumption, resilience, intentionality, tenacity, all of these things are so important in this business, because you can get hit hard. And just like in football, just like them Broncos got hit hard last night.
I got to take a dig at the Broncos.
Just like they got hit hard last night.
We were such good friends before this.
By the 70-year-old Pete Carroll, you can also, you got to be able to get up. You got to be able to get up, man. And that's what's really important, and I think that's huge in this business.
Man, I think everything you just said there, I mean, the tenacity, the get up, the grit, the whatever you want to call it, all of those terms lead back to one great result of pushing forward. And I'll tell you that for some people, that's a life lesson. Some people, it takes all their lives to learn to look forward and not look back. I try to talk to my kids about that. I'm like, especially during like sports, during baseball is a big one for us. My stepson, I'm coaching his team. We're out there, and I find myself almost every play saying, "Don't worry about that one. Let's focus on the next one." So we made a mistake there. Remember it, learn from it, get it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what happened. Worry about what's coming. And it's just but there again, some people learn it later in life. And hey, man, let's be reasonable. Some people never learn that. They never learn to say, hey, forget about what happened in the past. And I would venture, I have family that's like that. This just continuously worried about what's happened instead of where they're going.
Yeah.
So perfect way to draw that in, man. I mean, that's great. Again, it gives us a really like forward looking, again, that I still find myself still talking about your same processes, and it's all forward looking.
Yeah, it was instilled in me when I was 14 years old. I showed up for the first day of baling hay in 100-degree weather in a field with no sleeves on, and my arms bleeding by the 15 minutes in, and wanting to give up. Well, I mean, we had 500 bales to get back up on that trailer or whatever it was, and so at the end of the day, man, I think it was just I learned the value of work ethic early on in my life. I've tried to apply that to everything that I've done. And, you get, God gives you awesome, skills and talents and uniques, but one thing that he, can't necessarily make you do is work hard. And I think that that's really important for people to understand, that if you want to stand out in any capacity, you can have the best skills and talents. I mean, look at some of the NFL players that have all of the raw talent that they need, the physical components, but aren't willing to get in there and work hard. And that's and then look at Tom Brady, that maybe doesn't have all of those, and he's created his own system in life, professionally and personally, and now he's 45, 46 years old and still, one of the best quarterbacks out there playing the game. So,
because how easy, we're right here, beginning of football season. I think that's why Logan and I are having so much football talk. That, and he tried out for the other, there's 2 teams that are epically on my dislike list, and that's the Raiders and the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously we're all in and then, I grew up, the Seahawks were in our division, which we lost to last night, but the Seahawks were in our division when I was a kid. So anyway, divisional teams were always, kind of the ones that were the most hated, because those were the games we always got to go to and so on. But anyway, but how easy would it have been for Tom to walk away, after when he hit that retirement button and was like, I'm out. It didn't take him what Michael Jordan even referenced in his introduction today. He's like, he was gone for 2 months. I was gone for 2 years.
Yep.
He couldn't even take it. He couldn't even take the thought of retiring for 2 months, much less any. So what he's done is certainly great, and certainly moving things forward and looking forward, even at his age and everything that he's doing. So, but man, yeah. And, and I'll tell you, another thing that rings true when you start talking about the greatness of those guys is, you had pointed out that that you went to your broker and you were like, look, this is what I want to do. And he's like, nah, you can do that, but you're not going to do it here. And so, that's almost like a fuse
Yeah,
to some people. That's like, all right, game, set, match,
that's
bro.
right.
Let's roll.
Yeah, if people start telling you not to do something where it's too hard, that's a good indicator that there's an opportunity there to figure something out, and that
Yep.
other people aren't willing to, right? And so I think
Yep.
that when you think about the 5 needs of a business, or the 5 commandments of a business, you have to have a strong need. The barrier to entry needs to be high. You need to have control of it. You need to be able to scale it. And then essentially, you need to be able to step away from your time on that business. What does that take? Well, it takes grit. It takes tenacity. It takes systems to be able to do that. So one thing that you think about all these people that have been very successful, whether it be Steve Jobs, Bezos, Elon Musk, Michael Jordan. Think about the people that were around them, right? And so I went, trying to find, who trained Michael Jordan, who trained Kobe Bryant, who trained those guys, and that's Tim Grover. And Tim Grover has put out 2 books now, and now he's speaking to all these places. Same thing in the Navy SEALs, right? Like who trained those Navy SEALs? You can go find, David Goggins and Jocko Willink and all these guys that are willing to put this stuff out there that kind of lay out the blueprint. Now you have to find where your sweet spot is. What's the best thing that you can do, and then where do you find a lot of inspiration, and then combine those 2, and you can find an opportunity to operate in your sweet spot. And so, when I'm not operating in my sweet spot, I feel it. It feels like sandpaper, rubbing against. It feels like that hay bale on my arms again. And I got to say, okay, is this something I need to be doing, or do I need to delegate and elevate? And, that's a big piece of growing a business as well, is being able to step away from certain aspects of it, make sure you understand what you're best at, and get out of the things that you're not. But you have to have good people, have to good systems, and standard operating procedures around those things to be successful at that.
Yeah. And, and you talk about picking up hay when you were a kid. And again, I'm one of those hayfield babies too. We had a tobacco crop also stacked on top of the hayfield. Man, it seemed like every time whenever I look back on those years, what they taught me was one bale at a time. Right now, I was the lucky one. I wasn't up on the wagon. My dad always wanted to do the stacking because he would, we'd stack it and half of it would come off by the time we got wherever it needed to go, fall over off the thing. But I did have to get up in the stable and wait for him to get to the top of the elevator, the hay bales. And then, man, you talk about a July day in 100% Kentucky humidity in a hay stable. Not anything I cared about growing. It was good for growing up. It was character building. But when it was over, I was like, yeah, okay, we're going to try to avoid doing that. Now I want my kids to do it, but nevertheless. So what do you all have going on right now? You had mentioned the projects that you've got happening, and why don't you talk a little bit about that and tell us kind of where you all are headed right now?
Yeah, when evaluating the investment landscape and what opportunities we see on a regular basis, we look at Green Street Property Price Index pretty closely. Problem with that is it's a rear view look. You got to be able to look through the windshield as well. But when COVID hit, we had $30 million of shopping centers under contract, dropped every single one of those, and repivoted into multifamily, and we're able to build a good portfolio on that side of the business. Now that we've got data on these shopping centers and things like that, it gives us some certainty on how they're going to perform going forward. We can get back into these different asset classes. And so, we've got a decent amount of multifamily. We've bought 2 multifamily deals this year. We're all Midwest focused. So Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Arkansas, Oklahoma is where you're going to see us play most of our in the markets that we're playing at. But we've seen multifamily prices go through the roofs, and so you think about risk and what type of risk you're willing to take, and the basis and intrinsic value of cash flows and all these different things. And I do see some dislocations of how some of these retail shopping centers have performed and where the demand is for those from a capital standpoint. And we're finding opportunities there, which is great. These are neighborhood retail shopping centers, 35 to 85,000 square feet, e-commerce resistant, service-based tenants. So Amazon's not going to put them out of business. And they're the ones that you drive by on the way home and, from work. So, or you drive into work. So, it's kind of like those ones that are right by the neighborhood, less than a mile away. So that's one opportunity that we're continuing to capitalize on. I've got a couple of those in the works here. We bought a couple of those previously the last couple of months. And now we're starting to see some opportunity in flex industrial. And industrial is interesting because, when you think about a developer, they want to develop that 500,000 square foot industrial building and get one tenant and lock them in for 15 years. And that's all great and dandy. But we're starting to see that supply and demand start to equal out a little bit. And where the opportunity is actually for smaller businesses, last mile distribution, maybe a little office in the front, warehouse in the back. So, there's not a lot of new product being developed that is under 100,000 square feet. And so we're picking up a nice 4-tenant industrial deal here pretty soon in the southwestern Johnson County of Kansas. And Panasonic just landed, Kansas just landed Panasonic's new manufacturing plant. They beat out Oklahoma in DeSoto, Kansas, $4 billion, 4,000 jobs. It's going to go in the middle of Kansas. So, and this product is
man, it's hard to believe those middle Kansas areas, everything that I-70s ran through there for 1,000 years now. I mean, all Manhattan, Kansas, and everything from what is it, like Salina, like all around that Topeka area. I mean, that whole is wide open, and it's fed. And there's so much interstate traffic right there, and so many little cities you could pull workforce from.
Yeah. Absolutely. So see the opportunity there. I'm cautiously optimistic on multifamily. It's the largest asset in our portfolio. We'll continue to look for those opportunities. But, I think that what we're doing right now is really what Sam Zell did back when, he wasn't able to purchase and thought that there would be some fragmentation in the market and opportunity to buy. He calls himself the grave dancer. And not that I think that commercial real estate is going to go, the bottom's going to drop out of it, but there will be some fragmentation and opportunities on deals that were bought over the last 2 years with floating rate interest on those projects that needed to get 17 to 22% rent increases, and they might not be doing that. And so there might be some opportunities for us to step into some of those distressed situations. But what do we have to do to get ready for that? We have to build up the operational capacity to do so. So we're vertically integrated. We're managing our product as well. And it's going to be really important for us to continue to add people that have experience, knowledge, and skill sets to take on larger portfolios, different types of assets, and continuing to grow our management footprint so we can control our assets. And so I think that's a big piece of what we're focused on right now. Getting capital ready, getting the operations ready to make a big, investment here in the next, 12, 15 months.
Now, I want to shift the discussion to obviously you and I and everybody else that's kind of around us is into capital raising. Yeah. Now, as of recording, kind of mid-September here, 2022, compared to when this episode might air, we've recently went through an interest rate hike from the Fed. I noticed some capital markets just almost immediately were zapped dry, like just zip, and all of this capital was like all of a sudden went from soft commit to no commit or hard commit to no commit, unless you had the cash in your hand and was ready to go. That was even, in my opinion, that was almost like COVID-ish, like beginning COVID-ish when everybody because everybody got cautious there for I want to say, looking back now, it was like 7 minutes. But back then, it was like there was a month or 6 weeks where everybody was just very cautious about what was going on. So on the raising capital side, obviously the landscape has changed. Now, the people with money or the people that have the cash still want to invest. They're not necessarily scared. But are you dealing with any retail investors? And if so, how has that changed specifically?
Yeah, I mean, we raise a lot of money from retail investors. Primarily, that's our capital sources for our projects. And I think it goes back to making sure that you're pre-raising capital, meaning, hey, we do see interest rates increasing. We do see opportunities here, there, and this is why. And you have to be communicating on a regular basis. And so one of the things that we do is say, okay, well, how are interest rate hikes going to impact projects? Whether that be projects people previously invested in or forward-looking acquisitions. And so you'll see us, in our underwriting have interest rates that are higher than what they are currently, and it's because we're closing 60 days from now, and so we got to have some sort of cushion in there. It has impacted us. We walked away from one project earlier this year. It was a large mobile home deal. And we walked away because we weren't able to secure fixed rate financing at the level that we needed to. And so it has impacted deal flow. It has impacted pricing. And I think that sellers are still interested in yesterday's prices and buyers want tomorrow's prices. And so there's still this bid-ask gap that's going to have to be worked through, And so I think that it's really important for us as investors and as sponsors to be educating our investor base about these different components. And we do that on a monthly basis. We do it on a weekly basis. And we do it through every conversation that we're having. And so we try to get ahead of that stuff. You're going to have some folks that just get scared and say, hey, we're going to wait. But then you would look at, Ray Dalio or Munger and Buffett or let's just say Sam Zell. And when everybody's looking left, you got to go right. And so that's one thing that we've tried to rein true is like when
or everybody's looking behind, you got to look forward.
That's right.
And that's which we've already established you're kind of the king of is keeping things looking forward.
That's right.
And
yeah.
so now how are you feeding? You said you raise a lot of capital from retail investors, and that's I think particularly intriguing to a lot of the listeners, especially those who are trying to get into the game of raising capital to buy real estate deals and so on and so forth, because there's always the question, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And I think you just made the chicken being the deal or the egg being the capital and everything in between. But you just made a good point about constantly educating your investors. And I was one of those that fell into the kid that first came in and was like, okay, what do I got to do? Do I need to raise capital? Do I need to find a deal? When the whole thing is I was nowhere near ready to raise capital. I didn't even need to be discussing raising capital. I needed to be discussing how am I going to educate my investors so that when I do have a deal, I don't have to go back and reestablish why I'm good at what I do. I can establish why I'm good at what I do over the period, specifically through my podcast and through our educational content. And you're the same way. But what are you using to feed the top of your funnel with potential investors so that you can bring people in and down that education terminal and ready to invest when it comes time?
There's two different routes that we kind of take. One is the online route of, the social media, email marketing, and digital marketing. So you have that funnel, right, where you have to have reputation, you have to have thought leadership, and you have to be consistent. So if anybody follows me on LinkedIn, I post every single day on LinkedIn. Usually get somewhere between 4,000 and 15,000 views on those posts, and I'm posting about everything that we're doing in regards to that. So that's one piece. And then the other part is, I think that, and there's systems around that, right? Hunter teaches that, and there's different pieces around that. But, outside of that, I would say that it comes down to doing what you're saying you're going to do. And so, I think that the best source of capital is repeat investors and referrals. Because that is a warm lead instead of just a cold lead. And we treat those a little bit different, right? And so we do all kinds of different things. We have our own podcast. We have weekly blogs. We have a newsletter. We have monthly webinars to educate investors. And then just regular out there meeting with people, right? So that's the country clubs. That's putting on investor events here locally. That's business journal articles. That is meetups that we're going to. That is, speaking engagements that we're doing at certain events locally. And then just getting out and meeting with folks and having a ton of coffees. And again, there's really no, secret sauce to it. It's you need to be educated. And when people ask you about the market, you need to be able to give examples about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and the opportunities that you see. And you got to be able to tell a story. So, sales is just a transference of energy. Ed Milet says
That's
it
right.
best. If you can make someone feel a certain way, they're probably going to forget what you said, but they're not going to forget the way that they felt after you got done with your meeting. And so I think that's a really important aspect of raising capital, is just relationships and being open and willing to have conversations with people and put yourself out there. There's systems in place. We have investor relations team now. We have marketing team now, which is all helpful. But I'll tell you that most of those investors do want to speak with me at some point before they're going to invest in those projects.
Zach Happenstall says the same thing, man. He's like, dude, he says, I'm going to feed them all to me because, and that's difficult, man. It's so hard to scale. Have you found that?
It is.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think that was a very poignant spot right there where we needed to discuss just real quick because we're running out of time. But Zach Happenstall of Rise 48, a good friend of mine, and he says the same thing. He says, I'm going to feed them to me at some point because they want to talk to the man in charge.
That's right. And I think the biggest part that I learned from my early on career to where I'm at now is there's a certain point that it makes sense for you to. So you don't want to be the first point of contact necessarily. They need to be able to have interacted on a webinar or read blogs or talk to one of your team members. And then we have different levels of investors, so 1 through 5. So a 1 is going to be somebody that just filled out a form on something. A level 5 investor is a raving fan.
Listen, audience.
Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the CashFlowPro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must-Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making CashFlowPro part of your day. Now, back to the show.
Listen, audience, if you're wanting to raise capital, listen to this. Start over, Logan, because this is it right here.
Yeah.
This is the secret sauce. You have to start by segmenting.
That's right.
Go forward.
Yeah. So I think that level 1 is somebody that's just going to reach out to you and say, hey, I'm interested. Then, level 2 is, okay, they're interested. They've had a conversation with somebody on your team. Level 3 is, hey, they came to a webinar and they've had another conversation with your team. Level 4 is, all right, this person is ready for me to talk with, and we're going to have a 15 to 30-minute call. I'm going to make sure I follow the same process that Hunter Thompson does. Hey, my time is valuable. Your time is valuable. What can we get out of this that's going to make this a success? We start the call with that. It's very intentional. It's not just a relationship-driven kind of call. And then, then it's investing. And then after that is making sure that you create repeat investors and raving fans. And that's where the referrals start to come. And so each one of our leads or investors in our CRM is going to be tagged at a different level. And our investor relations team knows, okay, this person's ready for a call for Logan. Let's get Logan's assistant on the horn and let's make sure we get a call scheduled. And before we have that call, I've got an agenda in my mind, and I've shared that with the investors to say these are the things that we're going to be talking about. So, I think that that's really important. It's just kind of traditional sales efforts and making sure that your time, and these things, I have 2 hours a week to be able to go through these, and these are 15-minute calls. So what is that? That's about 8 of these a week that I have availability to do with these investors. And now there's certain times if somebody's local or they're a larger investor that they'll get more time, right? But, I think that it's really important to know where these folks are on the journey with you. So you're spending your time with folks that can actually have the opportunity to invest with you. And, that's really important for me to make sure I'm not wasting my time, or they're just not ready. It might not even be wasted time. They're just not ready. They're still in the educational phase. They're still learning. I've got a master class they can go through from a portfolio allocation standpoint. And then after they've done those things, boom, we're on a call and we're talking about, real stuff.
That's the point. You said you have an educational process, and that's where people who are wanting to raise capital or get into the real estate business or whatever the case is, they're not taking enough time to educate their potential investors. And you have to know when you need to circle somebody back through that educational part again.
That's exactly right.
Because ultimately, like you said, at the end of the day, you have 2 hours a week, 15 to 30 minutes, between 4 and 8 investor calls a week that are on your schedule. And you have to make that, you said it, intentional. They're not ready for a call with you if they're still asking questions about, well, can I use my IRA?
That's right.
Or
That's right.
if they're asking those kinds of questions, but when they finally say, all right, I think we're ready, then you take your time to answer those questions. All right, Logan, we're running out of time, brother. I got a couple of questions we ask every guest that comes on the show. And man, that content, the discussion that you just provided, dude, is such a, that needs to, if you're a listener right now, I'm going to encourage you. There's a little 30-second back button. You need to tap that about 15 times, go about, what is that? 7.5 minutes back, and re-listen to those steps where Logan segments his investors and their degree of readiness to invest. You can't just put an ad out there, have somebody opt in, call them and say, hey man, I'm ready for your 50 grand. What time can I expect it? It's not gonna work like that. Right. You have to put them through these processes. These processes have to be in place. And if they're not, then good luck raising capital. Yep. So, Logan, the questions that we ask everybody that comes on the show, what is the best book that you have recently read or are currently reading?
Yeah, I would say this. Best book that I've recently read is probably a book by Urban Meyer, and it was all about leadership. I cannot remember the name of it, but just, search for, leadership and Urban Meyer, you'll find it. And there were some awesome takeaways from a leadership standpoint in that book that I really enjoyed.
Awesome, man. All right. You mentioned at the beginning of the show you had just gotten back from vacation, but what is a dream vacation that you have either taken or hope to take?
Yeah, I would love to go to Rome. I'm a big Catholic guy, so I'd love to go see the Vatican and go just and experience that with my wife and kids at some point. Secondly is Hawaii. So Rome and Hawaii are definitely on the list that we'd love to do. With little kids, it can make it difficult, but we'll make it happen.
Man, I'll be honest, dude. My wife and I went to Rome a few months ago. I wouldn't take the kids until they're probably 16.
Yeah.
I mean, 16 or 18. That's just, man, there's way too much to soak in as an adult.
Absolutely.
I would go 2 weeks. And I would not take kids under I would say under 14 or 15, just depending on maturity.
Yeah, so they're either staying here or we're not going for a while, but we'll make it happen at some point for sure.
It's a wonderful place to see. We're big Catholics as well. I know that I don't want to disparage any of my audience if you just if you're against Catholicism, but that's where we are, and it was very intriguing and so much history, even not Catholic history, right. Even necessarily history in general. And real quick fact before we jump off here, but a guy told me there that I believe they've only unearthed 30% of what's there. Like we were standing in one place and he was like, underneath this is, I don't even remember this big whatever. They know it's buried there. And I was like, why is it still buried there? And he's like, because it takes so much of our resources to preserve what we've unearthed. If we leave that under the earth, it's being naturally preserved to a certain degree right now without our intervention. And that's where it needs to stay, at least for now. Anyway, all of that very intriguing discussion. Awesome, man. Rome was, you'll love it. Cool. You'll love everything about it. So how can the listeners reach out and get in touch with you? I know you said you bring in retail investors, and I know there's retail investors that listen to my show. I would like for them to be able to get in touch with you and learn more about your deals or wherever you want them in your cycle. I'd like for you to send them.
Yeah, you can follow me on LinkedIn just to get a flavor of what we're posting and what we're about. Logan Freeman, Mr. Kansas City. And then our website is...
Oh, man, Mr. Kansas. I can't even stand the word Kansas City because of the...
Yeah, well,
go ahead.
Yeah, until you come here and get some of that barbecue, then I might change your mind.
Might change my mind, huh?
I love it. Check us out on our website too, Casey. It's FTWinvestmentsllc.com. Put a lot of good content out there as well.
Awesome, man. Well, Logan, and listeners, please go follow him on LinkedIn. I mean, if nothing else, you can learn, you can
Absolutely.
prosper like he has, or just educate yourself and get involved. But he is a Kansas City Chiefs fan. I can't do anything about that. That part of it is kind of set already. But no, I like the guy, even if he is that. So, but no, man, thank you, Logan. I really can't thank you enough for everything you shared on the show today, because there's so much valuable stuff there for the listeners, capital raisers, investors, whatever. So thanks again. And listeners, as always, please head down and hit that subscribe button, and also leave us a review if you liked what you heard on the CashFlowPro podcast today. And we would very, very much so appreciate that. And with that, again, smash that subscribe button. And with that, I want to wish everybody a happy day. Logan, thanks again.
Thanks for having me on.
And yes, sir. Have a good one.
CashFlowPro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.